At the center of this shocking tale are two families, the Larsons and the Novaks, whose lives had been intertwined for years through neighborhood barbecues, PTA meetings, and shared carpools. Elias Larson, 52, was the picture of success in Maple Grove. A charismatic and driven real estate agent, he had built a thriving business from the ground up, becoming one of the top sellers in the region. His professional achievements were matched only by his reputation as a devoted family man and active community member. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and piercing eyes, Elias cut an imposing figure at neighborhood gatherings. He was known for his easy smile and quick wit, traits that served him well both in his career and social life. Despite approaching his mid-50s, Elias prided himself on staying fit, often seen jogging through the neighborhood in the early morning hours. Elias's wife, Ingrid, 50, was equally respected in the community. A pediatrician at the local hospital, she balanced her demanding career with an active role in various charitable organizations. Ingrid's warm demeanor and genuine concern for others made her a favorite among patients and neighbors alike. With her hair and kind eyes, she was often described as having a calming presence. The pride and joy of the Larson family was their daughter, Astrid, 25. A rising star in the world of journalism, Astrid had recently landed a coveted position at a prestigious national newspaper. Her investigative pieces on local corruption had already garnered attention from larger publications, and many in Maple Grove predicted she was destined for greatness. Astrid had inherited her father's ambition and her mother's compassion, a combination that made her both driven and empathetic in her reporting. With her hair and striking features, she turned heads wherever she went, but it was her sharp intellect and quick wit that truly set her apart. The Larson family dynamic was one of mutual respect and support. Elias and Ingrid had always encouraged Astrid's independence and ambitions, even when it meant her moving away for college, and later for her career. They maintained a close relationship through regular video calls and weekend visits. On the surface, the Larsons appeared to be the perfect family, successful, attractive, and happy. Their home on Elm Street was often the gathering place for neighborhood events, with Elias manning the grill and Ingrid ensuring everyone felt welcome. Little did their neighbors know that beneath this picture-perfect exterior, Elias Larson was harboring desires that would soon threaten to tear apart not only his own family, but another as well. The cracks in the Larson family's foundation were about to be exposed in the most devastating way possible. Just 3 houses down from the Larsons on Elm Street resided the Novak family. Lucas Novak, 54, was a self-made man who had built his construction company from a one-man operation into one of the most successful firms in the county. Known for his attention to detail and unwavering work ethic, Lucas had earned the respect of both his employees and clients. With his rugged good looks, broad shoulders, and calloused hands, Lucas was the epitome of masculine charm. Despite his success, Lucas never forgot his roots, often volunteering his company's services for community projects and mentoring young people interested in the trades. Petra Novak, 51, was Lucas's steadfast partner in both life and business. As the company's chief financial officer, she managed the books with precision and foresight, allowing Lucas to focus on the hands-on aspects of the business. Petra's sharp mind and no-nonsense attitude were softened by her nurturing nature, making her a beloved figure among the company's employees and her neighbors. With her warm eyes, Petra had a classic beauty that had only grown more refined with age. She was known for her homemade pastries, a skill inherited from her Czech grandmother, which made the Novak home a popular stop during neighborhood bake sales. Zora Novak, the 25-year-old daughter of Lucas and Petra, was a free spirit who had forged her own path in life. A talented graphic designer, Zora had recently started her own boutique design agency, specializing in branding for eco-friendly businesses. Her creativity and passion for environmental causes made her stand out in the conservative community of Maple Grove. Zora's style and vibrant personality were a stark contrast to her parents' more traditional outlook. With her hair often adorned with colorful streaks and her penchant for vintage clothing, Zora was impossible to miss. Despite their differences, the Novak family shared a strong bond, with Lucas and Petra supporting their daughter's entrepreneurial endeavors. Family dinners at the Novak household were lively affairs, filled with animated discussions about business, art, and politics. Lucas and Petra had raised Zora to be independent and outspoken, traits that sometimes led to heated debates but always ended in laughter and mutual respect. The Novaks were seen as pillars of the Maple Grove community, their success stories serving as an inspiration to many. However, the foundation of their seemingly perfect life was about to be shaken to its core, as desires and temptations would soon test the strength of their family bonds. The annual Maple Grove Summer Solstice Barbecue was a tradition that brought the entire neighborhood together. Held in the sprawling backyard of the community center, it was an event that everyone looked forward to, a chance to catch up with old friends, welcome newcomers, and enjoy the first real days of summer. This year, the responsibility of organizing the event had fallen to Elias Larson and Lucas Novak. The two men had worked tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect, from the carefully curated playlist of summer hits to the selection of local craft beers on offer. As the sun began to set on that warm June evening, the air was filled with the tantalizing aroma of grilled meats and the sound of laughter. Children chased each other across the lawn while their parents mingled, plastic cups of wine or beer in hand. Elias stood at the grill, expertly flipping burgers and exchanging pleasantries with his neighbors. His eyes, however, kept drifting to a figure across the yard. Zora Novak had arrived fashionably late, her entrance causing a small stir among the younger crowd. She wore a flowing sundress that accentuated her lithe figure, her hair cascading over her shoulders in loose waves. For a moment, Elias forgot the task at hand, mesmerized by Zora's carefree laugh as she joined a group of her peers. It was only when the smell of burning meat reached his nostrils that he snapped back to reality, quickly salvaging the burgers before anyone noticed his lapse in attention. Across the yard, Lucas Novak was having a similar experience. He had been in the middle of a conversation with a group of local business owners when Astrid Larson approached, offering to refill their drinks. Lucas found himself stumbling over his words, suddenly acutely aware of Astrid's presence. She moved with grace and confidence, her hair catching the golden light of the setting sun. Astrid's intelligent eyes met Lucas's, and for a moment, he felt as if she could see right through him. He quickly excused himself from the group, needing a moment to collect his thoughts. As the evening progressed, Elias and Lucas found themselves gravitating towards their friends' daughters. Casual conversations turned into deeper discussions, with Elias and Zora bonding over their shared love of classic literature, while Lucas was captivated by Astrid's passionate accounts of her latest investigative piece. Ingrid and Petra, engrossed in their own conversations and duties as hostesses, remained oblivious to the growing attraction between their husbands and daughters. The two women had been friends for years, their bond strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect. As the barbecue wound down and families began to head home, both Elias and Lucas felt a sense of excitement and guilt. They had discovered a connection with these younger women that they hadn't felt in years, a spark that both thrilled and terrified them. On the surface, the summer solstice barbecue had been a resounding success, bringing the community together for an evening of food and friendship. But beneath the veneer of neighborly camaraderie, the seeds of desire and betrayal had been sown. The events set in motion that evening would eventually lead to the unraveling of two families and shock the entire community of Maple Grove. In the weeks following the barbecue, both Elias and Lucas found themselves manufacturing reasons to cross paths with their newfound objects of desire. Elias began frequenting the trendy coffee shop, where Zora often worked on her design projects, while Lucas started taking a sudden interest in local journalism, often running into Astrid at the neighborhood cafe. These chance encounters quickly became the highlight of their days. Elias would feel his heart race every time he spotted Zora's colorful hair through the coffee shop window. He'd casually stroll in, pretending to be surprised to see her there. Their conversations would flow effortlessly, covering everything from obscure poets to the latest environmental initiatives in the area. Lucas, for his part, found himself captivated by Astrid's passion for uncovering the truth. He'd listen intently as she spoke about her latest investigations, offering insights from his years of experience in the local business community. Astrid appreciated his perspective, and Lucas basked in the glow of her admiration. Both men struggled internally with their growing feelings. Elias would lie awake at night, guilt gnawing at him as Ingrid slept peacefully beside him. He tried to rationalize his attraction to Zora as a harmless midlife crisis, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. Lucas found himself becoming distracted at work, his thoughts drifting to Astrid, when he should have been focusing on blueprints and contracts. He began to question his marriage, wondering if he and Petra had lost the spark that Astrid ignited in him. The clandestine nature of these meetings only added to their allure. There were close calls, like when Petra almost walked in on Lucas and Astrid deep in conversation at the cafe, or when Zora's friend nearly caught her and Elias sharing an intimate moment over a discussion of Dostoevsky. As summer progressed, the tension continued to build. Stolen glances at neighborhood gatherings, lingering touches that lasted just a moment too long, and the thrill of secret text messages exchanged late at night all served to fuel the growing infatuation. Both Elias and Lucas knew they were treading on dangerous ground. They were risking their marriages, their friendships, and their standing in the community. Yet the pull of these forbidden desires seemed to override all logic and morality. Little did they know that their separate infatuations were about to collide in a way that would change all of their lives forever. It was a humid August evening when everything changed. Elias and Lucas had met at their favorite local pub, ostensibly to discuss plans for the upcoming neighborhood watch meeting. But as they nursed their beers, an uncomfortable tension hung in the air between them. Elias and Lucas met for drinks, initially engaging in awkward small talk. Eventually, Elias gathered his courage to broach a sensitive topic. With hesitation, he confessed to having developed feelings for Lucas's daughter, Zora. He expressed his inner turmoil and guilt over these emotions. To Elias's surprise, Lucas's reaction was not one of anger, but of understanding. After a moment of contemplation, Lucas made a startling admission of his own. He had been experiencing similar feelings towards Elias's daughter, Astrid. This mutual revelation led to an hour-long heart-to-heart conversation. The two men shared their struggles with these forbidden attractions and the guilt that had been weighing on them. As the evening progressed and they continued drinking, their discussion took an unexpected turn. Lucas, his inhibitions lowered by alcohol, proposed a controversial idea. He suggested they could act on these feelings just once by swapping daughters for a night, with no strings attached. He argued this might allow them to move past these desires. Elias was initially shocked by the suggestion, recognizing its immorality and the potential consequences. However, as Lucas elaborated on how they could arrange such an encounter, Elias found himself considering the proposition, despite his better judgment. They convinced themselves that it could work. It would be a one-time thing, a way to satisfy their curiosity and desires without completely destroying their families. They reasoned that it might even save their marriages in the long run, allowing them to move past these inappropriate attractions. As last call was announced, Elias and Lucas shook hands, sealing their pact. They would approach Astrid and Zora separately, gauging their interest and ensuring everything was consensual. They set a date, 2 weeks from that night, and agreed on the details of their plan. Walking home that night, both men felt a mixture of excitement and dread. They had crossed a line, and deep down they knew there would be no going back. But the allure of fulfilling their desires, even just for one night, overshadowed any lingering doubts. Little did they know that their carefully laid plans would soon spiral out of control, leading to consequences far more dire than either of them could have imagined. Elias and Lucas faced the daunting task of approaching their daughters with an unconventional proposition. Both men spent considerable time contemplating how to broach the subject, aware of the potential consequences. Elias chose to speak with Astrid over lunch at a quiet bistro. As they sat in a secluded corner, his nervousness was palpable. Astrid, noticing her father's unease, inquired about his strange behavior. Gathering his courage, Elias explained the situation, revealing Lucas's attraction to her and their plan. Astrid was initially shocked and conflicted, part of her repulsed by the idea while another part was intrigued. After a long silence, she requested time to consider the proposition. Simultaneously, Lucas met with Zora in a local park for a private conversation. As they walked along a secluded path, he struggled to explain the situation, his usual confidence faltering. Zora listened with a mix of disbelief and curiosity, admitting to herself that she had always found Elias attractive in a forbidden way. She expressed her initial thoughts, acknowledging the proposal's outlandish nature while confessing a certain interest. Both daughters asked for time to process the information. Over the following days, they grappled with the decision, reaching out to each other to confirm the conversations had indeed taken place. Together, they discussed their feelings, fears, and the potential consequences of their actions. Ultimately, Curiosity and desire prevailed over caution, convincing themselves they could handle a one-night encounter without emotional complications. Both young women gave their consent a week after the initial conversations. This decision set the stage for a night that would irrevocably alter all of their lives. The agreed-upon evening arrived with a sense of surreal anticipation. Elias had booked 2 rooms at an upscale hotel in the neighboring city, ensuring their privacy. The plan was simple. Elias would meet Zora in one room, while Lucas and Astrid would occupy the other. Ingrid and Petra, blissfully unaware of the betrayal about to take place, had been told that their husbands were attending a regional business conference. Astrid and Zora had made excuses about a girls' night out in the city. As twilight fell, 2 cars pulled into the hotel parking lot, arriving from different directions to avoid suspicion. Elias's heart pounded as he watched Zora step out of her vintage Volkswagen, looking breathtaking in a flowing bohemian dress. Across the lot, Lucas felt a similar rush as Astrid emerged from her sedan, elegant in a sleek black outfit. The 4 met briefly in the hotel lobby, the air thick with tension and unspoken desires. They exchanged awkward glances, the reality of what they were about to do finally sinking in. With a nod, they separated, each couple heading to their designated room. In room 512, Elias and Zora stood facing each other, the silence broken only by the sound of their nervous breathing. Elias reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he tucked a strand of Zora's colorful hair behind her ear. The simple touch seemed to break the spell, and suddenly they were in each other's arms, years of pent-up desire spilling over. Meanwhile, in room 514, Lucas and Astrid were having a different experience. The initial awkwardness gave way to a deep conversation. Astrid, ever the journalist, found herself fascinated by Lucas's life stories. Lucas, in turn, was captivated by Astrid's intelligence and insight. As the night wore on, their physical encounter became almost secondary to the intense emotional connection they were forming. Hours passed, filled with passion, conversation, and moments of quiet reflection. As dawn broke, the reality of what they had done began to settle in. Elias lay awake watching Zora sleep. He felt a complex mix of emotions, satisfaction, guilt, and an unexpected emptiness. He had thought this encounter would quench his desire, but instead, he found himself wanting more. In the other room, Lucas and Astrid were still talking, their voices low and intimate. Lucas felt as if he had known Astrid his entire life, and the thought of this being a one-time thing suddenly seemed unbearable. As morning fully arrived, the 4 reconvened in the hotel lobby. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken feelings and the weight of their actions. Zora, looking slightly disheveled but glowing, gave Elias a small smile before turning to leave. Astrid and Lucas shared a lingering look, reluctant to part. The drive back to Maple Grove was filled with silent reflection for all involved. They had crossed a line, and deep down, each of them knew that things would never be the same. Elias found himself already planning ways to see Zora again, his obsession growing rather than diminishing. Lucas was lost in thoughts of Astrid, replaying their conversations and feeling a connection he hadn't experienced in years. Astrid felt a mixture of guilt and exhilaration, her analytical mind already dissecting the experience and its potential ramifications. Zora, for her part, felt a sense of closure, having satisfied her curiosity about Elias but ready to move on. As they returned to their normal lives, outwardly pretending nothing had changed, the seeds of disaster had been planted. What was meant to be a single night of indiscretion had set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to tragedy. In the days and weeks following the fateful night at the hotel, the facade of normalcy in Maple Grove began to crack. What was intended to be a one-time encounter to satisfy curiosity and desire had instead opened a Pandora's box of complications and intensified emotions. Elias found himself consumed by thoughts of Zora. What had started as a physical attraction had blossomed into a full-blown infatuation. He began manufacturing reasons to be near her, showing up at her favorite cafes, and even driving by her apartment under the guise of checking on properties in the area. His work began to suffer as he spent hours daydreaming about their night together and imagining a future with her. Ingrid noticed the change in her husband's behavior. His distraction, his sudden interest in Zora's social media profiles, the way his eyes would light up at the mention of her name, all of these signs pointed to something being amiss. However, she pushed her suspicions aside, not wanting to believe that Elias could betray her in such a way. Lucas, on the other hand, was grappling with a different kind of aftermath. His encounter with Astrid had left him feeling guilty and conflicted. While he was undeniably drawn to her intelligence and passion, he also felt a deep shame for betraying Petra and complicating his relationship with the Larson family. Lucas threw himself into his work, trying to bury his feelings under a mountain of contracts and construction plans. Petra sensed the change in her husband. His sudden long hours at work and his distracted demeanor at home led her to wonder if the pressure of running the business was finally getting to him. She tried to be supportive, unaware of the true source of his distress. Astrid found herself in a state of emotional turmoil. The night with Lucas had awakened feelings she hadn't expected. She admired his strength, his wisdom, and the way he truly listened to her. These feelings conflicted with her guilt over betraying her mother and her own moral code. She buried herself in her work, taking on more investigative pieces than ever before, trying to distract herself from the emotional whirlwind. Zora, surprisingly, seemed the least affected by the encounter. While she had enjoyed her night with Elias, she viewed it as a one-time experience, a chapter closed. However, she couldn't help but notice Elias's increased presence in her life and found herself growing uncomfortable with his attention. The situation between Elias and Lucas deteriorated in the weeks following their arrangement. Elias's pursuit of Zora became increasingly obvious, causing discomfort and raising suspicions in their community. Lucas, who had adhered to their agreement, grew angry and jealous at Elias's continued interest in his daughter. Their once friendly relationship soured, with interactions becoming strained and hostile. The peaceful community of Maple Grove was on the brink of upheaval, as the consequences of their indiscretion threatened to unravel their lives. The tension culminated on an autumn evening when Lucas confronted Elias at his home. Their argument quickly escalated, with both men hurling accusations and insults. The confrontation turned physical, with Lucas shoving Elias and Elias retaliating by swinging his whiskey glass. The altercation spiraled out of control, resulting in a violent struggle on Elias's front lawn. In the heat of the moment, Lucas struck Elias with a rock, causing a fatal injury. Realizing the gravity of his actions, a horrified Lucas fled the scene as sirens approached in the distance. This tragic turn of events, stemming from jealousy and betrayal, was set to shock the quiet neighborhood of Maple Grove and irrevocably change the lives of all involved. The discovery of Elias Larson's body on his front lawn sent shockwaves through Maple Grove. Police swarmed the quiet suburban street, their flashing lights illuminating the faces of shocked neighbors who had gathered to witness the unfolding tragedy. Detective Amelia Hartley, a seasoned investigator with the county police, took charge of the case. Her keen eye immediately noted the signs of a struggle: the broken porch railing, the shattered whiskey glass, and most damning of all, the blood-stained rock lying near Elias's body. As dawn broke, the Larson home became a hive of activity. Forensic teams combed the area for evidence, while Detective Hartley began the grim task of interviewing the family. Ingrid Larson was inconsolable, unable to comprehend how her seemingly perfect life had been shattered overnight. Astrid, pale and shocked, provided what little information she could, her journalistic instincts temporarily numbed by grief. Across town, Petra Novak woke to find Lucas missing. His truck was gone and he wasn't answering his phone. As news of Elias's death spread, a sick feeling of dread settled in her stomach. Zora, hearing of the tragedy, was overcome with guilt. She couldn't help but feel that her actions had somehow led to this horrific outcome. As Detective Hartley pieced together the events of the night, a picture began to emerge of a community hiding dark secrets beneath its pristine exterior. The investigation would uncover the tangled web of desires and betrayals that had led to this moment, leaving no one in Maple Grove untouched by the scandal. The trial of Lucas Novak was a spectacle that gripped the community. The courtroom was packed curious onlookers and devastated family members. As the sordid details of the affair and the fateful confrontation were laid bare, the once respected businessman sat silently, a shell of his former self. Despite his lawyer's best efforts to argue for manslaughter, citing the heat of the moment and Lucas's previously unblemished record, the jury found him guilty of second-degree murder. The judge, taking into account the circumstances and Lucas's eventual surrender to authorities, sentenced him to 18 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 12 years. As Lucas was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom erupted in a cacophony of sobs and murmurs. Petra Novak, stoic throughout the trial, finally broke down, supported by a tearful Zora. Across the aisle, Ingrid Larson and Astrid clung to each other, their faces a mix of grief and grim satisfaction at the verdict. The sentencing marked the final chapter in the tragic saga that had consumed Maple Grove. As the community struggled to heal and move forward, the story of the two families served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly life can unravel when boundaries are crossed and desires are left unchecked.